Okay, good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ian Bevington. I head up Mitel's customer marketing team. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at deployment models. Effectively, what I'm going to do is pick up from, for those of you who saw Christian's presentation, Mitel presentation this morning, I'm going to pick up where he left off. So we're going to look at the drivers behind deployment models. We're going to take a look at all of the deployment options that are available to us as we stand today. And then we're going to look at that cloud piece in a little bit more detail. And what I want to do is kind of unbundle it so we can make sense of the benefits and also some of the pitfalls that are involved in moving to the cloud. So, to the annoyance of some of my colleagues, I'm on record regularly of saying that cloud is just a deployment model. And I think it's important very quickly to review what's happening and driving that change. So first of all, from Mitel's perspective, what we see is an awful lot of people still interested in flexible working, mobile working, and that's been driven by a desire to change the way people work, to improve productivity, but also to accommodate a more tech-savvy workforce who are expressing opinions about the devices that they use and the places that they work. Similarly, if we look at our customer base, especially if you're working in a B2C environment, our customers have changed. They've all got smart devices. They're wanting to communicate with us in a media of their choice. So we're seeing a lot of customer engagement around contact center, moving out to multimedia, understanding how they can use customer interaction as a differentiator. And then the third one is all around business process improvement, business agility. So lots of conversations around communication enabling applications, customer relationship management. And that, of course, particularly in SME and enterprise businesses, draws through the conversation about vertical markets. So really, when you start having those conversations, it's really important to choose a partner that understands your vertical market, understands your business, and can work with you as a true partner. So if you pull all of these elements together, and you're really, on a quest to meet these three key communication requirements in your organization, then a large majority of you come to the conclusion that traditional legacy IT delivery models can't meet these requirements on an ongoing basis. And that really is what underpins the requirement to start looking at deployment models and finding a better way of delivering these IT services. So, if we look at this from an organizational size point of view, what we see is that small businesses, no surprises, they tend to have less sophisticated processes. They tend to have less access to resources, but they still need the ability to work flexibly and in a mobile way, perhaps in some cases more so. So I'm thinking of a proprietor maybe who, is effectively engaged with that business 24/7. So they need access to the applications, but it may not be viable to deliver those applications on site. So that really is where private cloud comes in, because it's a way of benefiting from shared services. So you're getting an economy of scale. All of a sudden, all of the things that might happen in an enterprise business become viable for smaller businesses. If we look at larger businesses, then they're much more likely to look at private cloud, and that's because if not for all of their applications, for a proportion of them, they'll be thinking about specialist applications that apply in their industry or possibly even to their specific business. They might be responsible for the differentiation that that business offers to its customer, and they'll probably want to retain some control over the deployment of that application. So no hard and fast rules, but we are seeing public cloud getting more traction in the sort of small businesses, and we're seeing private cloud having more traction in larger businesses. So with that in mind, if we focus for a moment on SME and up, then progressive migration becomes very important. And it's important for two reasons. First of all, because it's likely that organisation has a significant investment in communications and they need to manage that investment. So it's about migrating at a pace that makes sense for that business. But secondly, because doing a big bang swap out just represents too great a risk within an organisation of that kind. So from Mitel's perspective, we've really focused on this over the years. If you bought an SX2000 SG in 1983, then you could take the cards out of that PBX and plug them into an SX2000 Lite. That transition took place around 1992. When we got through to IP telephony, you could buy yourself a 3300, you could replace the main control cabinet with a 3300 and start to build out an IP infrastructure. When we got through to 2010, we introduced virtualization. You could take the software, you could take the licenses and the devices and move that through into a private cloud virtualized solution. I think the bit that's harder is to work out how you then move from a CapEx model to a subscription model. So I'll talk about that a little bit later on. So Mitel, we've got a really good reputation for investment protection, and be sure we'll carry that forwards into the cloud. So what are our options? Well, there's a good old Mitel 3300 ICP, still, probably the biggest volume ship from Mitel, and the reason is, it's purpose-built, it's hardened, it's secure, it has both the TDM switch and an IP backbone in it, which means it's fantastic if you want to deploy a mixed environment. And let's face it, most of us are still in a mixed environment if it's only ISDN trunks that are connected to it. So that still represents a great choice. But the important thing is, let's say you go and buy one of these, brand new, then you're really buying 4 elements, and those 4 elements are the hardware, the software, the licenses, and the devices. So if you do decide to change deployment model, the only piece that you may stop using is the hardware piece. I say may stop using because if you carry on using ISDN trunks, then it's very likely you would use that as the network gateway and then move your call control, for example, into a virtualized environment. The second option is to use an industry standard server. So this was made possible around 2007-ish with the introduction of the Nehalem chipset. As you can see, up to 5,000 extensions per node, so very, very scalable. You can pretty much choose a server from any of the significant vendors. I would like to just bring your attention to that Stratus fault tolerant option. So that's a fault tolerant server. It's got 2 of everything in the box. It's constantly monitored. It's hot swappable. And you can use a 3300AX cabinet as an IP to analog solution. So if you're deploying in an environment where you've got both IP and analog, and business continuity is really important to you, that's a great solution. You're building a fully redundant system, which is important in an analog environment where you can't use the IP resiliency piece. The third option is to move to virtualization. So Mitel were the first to crack this, and we work closely with VMware to do so. The first site in the UK was Ashford Council. That went live February 2010. So this is a great option if you are building a private cloud solution in a VMware environment. You can just throw all of your Mitel applications in there, just like any other business application, and leverage all of those great VMware features, high availability, site recovery manager, all of those pieces. A variation on this theme. Just before we move on, hot off the press, we now support Hyper-V as well, so you can put your MyVoice business in a Hyper-V environment. I know that's something that's been asked for a couple of years now. So a variation on this is our virtual appliance. So what we have here is MiCloud and MyVoice Business in a single virtual appliance. So this is optimized for SME customers, fits nicely between, say, 40 users and 500 users. And it's a really good solution if you're looking to take an office where you need business agility, mobility, and, really changing the way people work. And the licensing mode for this is very much around UCC licenses. So you're either buying an office worker, a mobile worker, or a knowledge worker. Okay, so license bundles, creating a very economic way of delivering lots and lots of capability, UC, collaboration, those kinds of things. Now, in terms of deployment model for this, there are effectively 3 options. So option number 1 is you buy it and deploy it in your environment. Option number 2 is that a Mitel service provider, like Britannic, take it and they provide it to you on a subscription basis. So it becomes UC as a service, exactly the same capability, but you're paying for it on a price per user per month basis, and all of the management of it sits with your partner. The third option is that Mitel have their own cloud, and what we do is we spin these virtual appliances up in our cloud, and for smaller resellers that don't have the cloud capability that Britannic have, they can do what they do best, so manage the customer, implement the solution, and support the solution, and we do the cloud piece. So those are the 3 options with this particular piece. The next option is to move to a full public cloud solution. I do want to kind of do a deeper dive on this to understand the pros and cons of it. But effectively, you're moving to a price per user per month. The way we implement that is on a MyVoice business multi-instance, so we can run, up to 100 instances of MyVoice business on a single platform. Clearly, there's some economy of scale benefits in that, and it's great. If you want predictable service, predictable pricing, you want elasticity to grow and contract, really good solution. So, I mentioned earlier on that we've been putting some thought into what happens when a customer effectively wants to move from a CapEx model to a subscription model. So we're moving from hardware and software that we've deployed within our business, we've bought licenses as capital licenses, and now we want to move to a subscription model. And what we have is a program by which you can trade in your capital licenses and receive a discount on the subscription licenses over a 3-year period. So that discount is a decent discount if you're just replacing dial tone for dial tone, but the discount becomes greater if you opt for one of the high-value UCC licenses where you're doing, where you're implementing serious mobile working, mobile clients, UC, and collaboration. So that program began in October, and of course Britannic can take that program and build out some really clever things in terms of how they present the whole solution to you. So let's just focus on cloud for a moment. And one of the questions I get quite often is, why are customers moving to cloud? And the truth is, there's no one reason. So here's some of the things that we hear. Oh, that's a surprise. Here we go. So the first thing I hear is our strategy is around cloud. Okay, so we're just moving everything to the cloud. That's the motivation for that is normally, one of 2 things. Either what they want to do is get the IT team out of the techie bits so that it can get more involved in business process improvement, understanding how IT can be applied more effectively, focus on the deployment of it, focus on improving customer service, those sorts of things. So that's one motivation. The other motivation, of course, is simply that we want to shrink the size of our IT department and put more people into core operations. So one of those 2 motivations for that option. The second option is around, we just need the technology now. We've got a new project, we've just acquired a new business, something's changed within our business, we need to deploy, we haven't got the capital, or we don't want to find the capital, we don't have the resources. How can you help us? And cloud can be a great way of getting something deployed in your organization in a matter of days or weeks, be up and running with all of that new technology, benefit from it without that upfront investment. The third reason is simply that it works better for our business. So we talked earlier on about small businesses that might find that it simply isn't viable to deploy all of this technology within a smaller business. So that's one reason. The other reason is cloud often works much better in a distributed business. So if you've got lots of offices, and perhaps those offices have got legacy key systems in each of them, or you've got lots of mobile or home workers, very often you find that a cloud deployment makes much more sense. The next reason has to do with total cost of ownership. And I think this is quite an interesting one, and Chris touched on it earlier on. So if you're running a contact center where you're doing a technology refresh, say every 2 or 3 years, then it might well be that cloud looks like a really good deal. However, if at the other end of the scale, you're a small provincial hotel in Berkshire who replaces their PBX every 20 years, the numbers might not stack up. So just think about the period over which that you're making a consideration. And then finally, of course, there are businesses that have got acquisition strategies that are growing fast, that grow and contract, and cloud, of course, gives them that flexibility. So those are the key reasons. As you read down there, you'll perhaps identify with 1 or 2 or 3 of them, probably not all of them. So the other thing I see, which is really interesting, is particularly from analysts and some of the new entrants, they're multiplexed together the benefits of unified communications, collaboration, multimedia contact center and cloud. And they present a very confusing picture. So that might make sense if you're an owner of a 15-year-old digital PBX with no application overlay. But for most of us, we've got some application overlay within our organization. And so it's difficult to see what those advantages are. So, what I've done here is I've identified some or all of the benefits, and you've seen these come up time and time again today. So the question is, what am I looking to achieve? Where am I at now? Where am I looking to get to? What are the key things that I'm trying to do here? And then you can start to make sense of, well, what do I have today? How is that fulfilling those requirements? And what do I need going forward to fulfill the business needs, to fulfill that business transformation, if that's what's going on within my business? And I think, the output of that can be many and various. You might decide, well, I just need to take my current, Mitel solution or a VIA solution and roll out some UC on top of that. That's all I need to do. I don't need to move to the cloud. If it's around support and simplification, you might talk to Britannic about, say, well, can you take what I have deployed in my data center today, move it into your data center and wrap a service around it? That might meet your requirement. However, if you've got ticks in a lot of these boxes, then you get to a critical mass where you start to go, okay, well, a cloud-based solution looks like it would make more sense. What's my view of the financing of that? Am I looking to move from CapEx to OpEx? If I am, I'm probably looking at a public cloud solution. If I'm not, I'm possibly looking at a private cloud solution. But I do think it's really important to map out exactly what you're trying to achieve, rather than getting sucked into some of the analyst reports and vendor pitches that we see. So what are the potential benefits? Well, in my mind, they're all geared up around shared services and economy of scale. So we mentioned earlier, it has the potential to reduce cost because you're sharing infrastructure. It might give you better access to expertise, specialist expertise, particularly if you're trying to do something really clever in your organization with contact center or UC or communication-enabled applications. Very likely it'll deliver improved security and business continuity. Most cloud providers, as Britannic do, are working in at least a tier 3 data center, which is probably at least as good or better than you might be able to do yourselves. It's probably going to give you better connectivity. You've got a whacking great big cross-connect in that cloud environment. And as we mentioned earlier on, it enables you to have an elastic solution, so you can flex it up and down as you please. So what should we be thinking about? Okay, so first of all, don't forget about the features. So some of the startup cloud businesses will talk, will distract you with mobility and collaboration. But in fact, when you get down to the nuts and bolts of the features, it's a very immature call control. So if you're replacing a very mature PBX with a cloud solution, a lot of customers get disappointed with that. What's included from a technology refresh perspective? So what happens, when I need a software upgrade? Does my service provider take care of all of that? How's the contract constructed around growth? So I know when we get to UC as a service, what a lot of service providers do is they'll say, right, you've got 100 users, we'll contract you at 80 users, that's the minimum you'll pay, and then you pay for the top up. So if you've got another 20 users one month, that's plus 20. The next month it might be plus 15. The next month it might be plus 22. So it gives you that flexibility, but just make sure it's constructed in the right way. The time period for total cost of ownership, we talked about that. 2-year contact center refresh versus a 20-year hotel refresh. Think about that perspective. Security and compliance. So Chris was talking about a FinServ organization. They've got some pretty critical compliance requirements around call recording, MiFID, those kinds of things. So if that's important, you'll probably want to work with a partner like Britannic that can get their head around those issues for you and make sure you are compliant. And then, less common these days, but have you got connectivity at every site? Can you get the connectivity you need to make a cloud deployment? It's not always possible if you're in a rural location, so just check that. Another little perspective in terms of choosing a solution. I've picked out 3 examples here. So small business, very fixed service. There are suppliers out there. You could pretty much buy this on the internet. It's like buying broadband. 3 fixed options. You sign up to it. They switch it on. They send you the phones in a jiffy bag. You plug them in. You're away to go. For some businesses, that's fabulous, but there's no flexibility in it and limited opportunity to talk to somebody if you've got a problem. So that's one option, viable for some small businesses. What's really interesting is to look at what's going on in Scandinavia. So we've had increased exposure to this over the last year or so through the acquisition of Telepo. That's a cloud-based UC solution that Mitel acquired at the beginning of the year, very much focused in Northern Europe and Scandinavia. They're probably about 3 to 5 years ahead of us in terms of adoption of cloud, but also, they're very mobile-centric. What you see there is some really clever, innovative solutions which are combining, the SIM that goes in your phone, the call control. Sometimes they don't care. It's just one user. I don't care whether it's a phone on the desk or it's a mobile user. I don't care. It's just a client that's going to sit on a device, and it's a single device per user or 2 devices per user. And what they're doing is they're bundling up your connectivity, your fixed connectivity, your mobile connectivity, maybe even some broadband into people's home, and that call control piece into a complete communication package for you. Still to an extent fixed, but what it does is it provides great value for money, because what they're doing there is that they're sort of amortizing the margin across a number of communication services and providing you with a fantastic service. So I think we'll see more and more of that coming to the UK as we move forward over the next couple of years. And then finally, Bigger organisations, more likely to want a partnership with their service provider, more likely to want somebody who can advise and help with the migration, and that really is where Britannic fits. So a good understanding of business process, a good understanding of the technology, a good understanding of connectivity and cloud, pulling all of that together into what you might consider to be a bespoke solution for your business. So, just to finish off, I want to talk a little bit about Mitel and Britannic. I think the big Mitel gain is that we have worked hard to make sure we fit with your business. So at the top there you see the deployment model flexibility. We can deploy on-site or in the cloud or a number of options in between. We can fit with various IT frameworks, Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, VMware. And of course, that fits very well with Britannic's strategy because they can deploy Mitel, they can deploy VMware, they can deploy Microsoft Link. So you might want a Mitel voice infrastructure with a Link overlay, that's perfect. And then from an end user point of view, it's really important to be able to allow your end users to use a device of their choice in a location of their choice. So that really is the picture. From a portfolio perspective, if we focus first on that on-premise piece, we have My Voice Office right at the bottom end. Typically, those products go out in the range of 10 to 40, 50 extensions. That's where that fits. The majority of you guys are probably sitting in that mid-market area, My Voice Business. That typically deploys from 30 or 40 extensions up to 10,000 or more extensions. And then through the acquisition of Astra at the beginning of the year, we now have what was the Ericsson MD110 morphosized into MX1, and that really is positioned at the very high-end enterprise space, so 10,000 extensions upwards. Now, if we look on the cloud side, I mentioned Telepo earlier on, so that really is focused on small business. It's a fantastic, innovative product. I just love it. Not really a migration requirement there, so people just do a swap. But in the mid-market and enterprise space, it's really important that you can manage that progressive migration. So for My Voice Business, you can choose to go to public or private cloud. For My Voice MX1, today, you can go to private cloud. Very soon, we'll also have a multi-instance platform for that, which will allow MX1 users to move to a public cloud solution. And as a result of that strategy, we're probably the fastest growing cloud business in the industry. What's interesting here is you can see we've got lots and lots of seats, 750,000 seats deployed. You might look at this and think, well, actually that's quite a small number, the $20 million number, but remember that's subscription revenue, so it's a reoccurring revenue that carries on year after year. And as a result of that, we've been recognised by Gartner. So this year, they've moved us into the leadership position as a UC provider, and perhaps more importantly, as a visionary in the UC as a service category. So we're really, really pleased and excited about that. In fact, next week I'm off to the Gartner Symposium to see what opportunities there are there to engage further with them and understand what we'll do with them going forwards. From a Britannic perspective, so we've talked about all of those Mitel pieces. I'm just going to very quickly discuss how that fits into the Britannic picture. So at the top there, lots and lots of services, Mitel services, Microsoft services, so a really wide portfolio of services. In the middle there, you've got the infrastructure pieces. So it might be an on-site deployment, it might be a cloud deployment, it might be a blend of the two. So you might decide, I'll have my primary instance of My Voice Business on site, but I'll have a backup instance in the Britannic cloud just to protect me for business continuity. And then the bottom there, the all-important connectivity. So really important to have resilient connectivity, MPLS, Ethernet, SIP connectivity, really important to get that piece right. So the why Britannic piece, well, first of all, you know, they can guarantee you service availability, very important in a cloud environment. They are cloud experts, but with both on-premise and cloud capability. So it's important to get that balance, to understand both environments, particularly if you're migrating from one environment to another. Great trading programs, so, you know, and a lot of flexibility around those trading programs. So your requirement might be to move to the cloud in a, you know, in a cash neutral way. So that might be one set of requirements, or you might actually be looking to the cloud to free up some capital to invest in your core business. And again, that's a possibility. Seminars and workshops, I get involved in some of those. Britannic's probably one of our most active channels in that respect. And you know, the great thing is that they'll keep coming back and checking and optimizing and making sure that you're getting the best ROI out of your solution. So I hope you feel like you're in the right place. That's Mitel and Britannic. That's me done. Any questions? Silence. Oh.
Your public offering, what restrictions are there on that public offering?
In what way?
In respect to functionality.
Right, okay, so I find this quite interesting because I'll come back to my statement about cloud is just a deployment model. The software we deploy, to be really clear, the software we deploy, whether you deploy it on-site or in the cloud, is absolutely identical. So you might see some connectivity advantages, you might see some business continuity advantages by moving between different deployment models, but in terms of scalability and features, it's identical. There's nothing you can do in the cloud that you can't do on-premise, or vice versa.
So potentially on your public offering, all you're taking from the client are license costs or licenses, and you are effectively enabling those licenses.
Correct.